I vividly recall one afternoon when I was a young man, just past my 20s, with little in my possession, but a modest wage and a mind brimming with dreams. I attended a small seminar, and the speaker, an older man with white hair and eyes like fire, said something that has stayed with me to this day. If today you see something amiss in your life, then yesterday you allowed it to happen. The room fell silent. I sat motionless. Those words struck me deeply. They didn't blame me. They simply illuminated a shadow, the place I called temporary, to mask my procrastination. From that day, I began to understand the pain of discipline is a wake-up call. The pain of regret, however, is the echo of time lost. Have you ever seen the eyes of someone who missed the most important thing in their life? They aren't sad, they are empty. Sadness is still an emotion. Emptiness is a void where a dream once lived, but no one tended it. A father once told me, I wish I had played with my children more. But back then I was busy working. 15 years later, when his child left home without a word, he realized what he called busy wasn't worth the distance it created. And I learned something. Regret often comes not from what we did wrong, but from the right things we didn't do when we still had time. Think back to the moments you stood before a mirror, facing yourself, with no one around. No applause. No reason to pretend. What did you see in those eyes? Was it someone who lived true to their beliefs, or someone who kept promising, forgetting, starting over, and then feeling disappointed? Discipline doesn't make you a genius, but it makes you trustworthy in your own eyes. And that, dear friend, is the root of all confidence. Confidence doesn't come from praise. It comes from the memory between you and yourself when you promised to do something and you did it. I once overheard a woman say to her friend, I'm tired of always trying. And her friend gently replied, do you think being tired from effort is worse than being tired from doing nothing and living in disappointment? Those words echoed in me because they capture the two kinds of exhaustion, one from progress, one from stagnation. One makes you grow, the other shrinks you. One sharpens you, the other drains you. At first, they feel the same. Both are heavy, both uncomfortable, and if you can't tell them apart, you might choose the exhaustion that leads to regret. Once, I passed a small farm on the outskirts of town. An old man was tending his garden, watering each row, nurturing each plant. I asked him, why don't you rest and let the young ones do this? Without looking at me, he said, I don't do it for the plants. I do it for myself. Every morning I tend the soil is a morning I don't become the person I fear. Someone who gives up. I walked on, but my heart felt heavy because I, too, had seasons of surrender, times when I let things drift, times when I hoped luck would come without sowing seeds. And those seasons were where regret sprouted quietly, but persistently. Dear friend, I'm not saying this to frighten you. I don't want you to live haunted by the idea that every mistake leads to suffering. No, I only want you to be awake that today's silence could become tomorrow's scream if you don't take the helm of your life. Discipline doesn't demand you do more. It only asks you to pause long enough to question, is what I'm doing truly leading me where I want to go? And if not, do you have the courage to choose a small pain today to avoid a greater one later? You can choose to walk for 30 minutes each day, or choose to carry blood pressure medicine later. You can choose to save a small amount, or choose to stay up worrying about debt. You can choose to teach your children early, or choose to mend the distance later. You always have a choice, but you cannot choose both ease and good results. One must be sacrificed. And a grown person is one who chooses wisely at the right time. Today, when you turn off this screen and return to real life, countless small choices will appear. What to eat, what to read, when to sleep, whether to call that friend, whether to finish that plan. I won't be there to guide you, but I hope in that moment you'll remember this. Every decision you delay could be a small cut on the future you're trying to build. Don't let them accumulate into a larger wound. You can start again. No need to wait for tomorrow. No need to wait for the first of the month. Right now, you can choose what's right. And if you do what's right once, then again, then consistently, you'll see. The pain of discipline ceases to be a burden. It becomes a foundation, a solid ground for you to stand tall before life, before others, and before yourself. There's something strange about regret that I only realized later. Regret never comes in the morning. It comes at night, not when you're busy, but when you're alone, not when you're acting, but when you pause and realize you didn't act. And the most painful part is, it doesn't shout, it whispers, and in that silence, you hear yourself. I once asked an older man near my home, if you could return to one moment in your life, when would it be? He gazed into the distance for a while, then said, I'd go back to when I told my wife, I'm busy, later. Okay, that short sentence for him was the start of a distance he could never close. She was gone, and he was left with one phrase, later. You see, regret doesn't come from anger, but from what we didn't do, didn't say, didn't express, didn't start, didn't continue. You might be living an ordinary day. The alarm rings. You turn it off. A missed call, you haven't called back. A goal, you push it to next week. Everything seems fine, but let me warn you, that's exactly where regret begins. Not loudly, not clearly, but smoldering, repeating, until one day you wake up and realize you're not as young as you thought. Opportunities aren't as close as you imagined, and dreams have grown tired of waiting for you. I once heard an old woman say, if I'd known my knees would hurt like this, I'd have danced more when I was young. I laughed then, but that night I couldn't sleep, because I, too, was refusing many things, thinking there was still time. But time doesn't warn you before it slips away. It just takes quietly, cleanly, without returning. And if you don't Zeiss each day, you won't see the consequences right away, but they'll pile up in the dreams you didn't pursue, in the love you weren't brave enough for, in the work you didn't do wholeheartedly. And you look around and see those who once lagged behind you now far ahead. Don't wait until regret calls you by name. Act. Before it finds your address, choose the pain of today, waking early, reading, refusing comfort, rewriting plans, saying sorry, starting again because those small pains are the only shield keeping regret from creeping into your heart. I once told a student, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to avoid repeating mistakes long enough for them to turn into regret. You're living in a rare moment where you still have the chance to do what's right, and you know it. You don't need me to point it out. You already know what you need to do. You're just delaying, hoping for a better day than today. But that day won't come. Not because it doesn't exist, but because you won't recognize it anymore if you let today slip by without action. Every time you procrastinate, you don't just lose time, you're teaching your mind, this isn't worth it. And when you truly need to act, you'll no longer have the emotion to start. You see, regret doesn't come early, but it comes surely And it doesn't ask if you're ready, it just knocks. And you either greet it with tears or stop it now. With the smallest choices, I've regretted small things. Not writing a thank you letter, not keeping a promise, not saying, I'm proud of you. Those things seem trivial at first, but when you add them up over the years, they're the distance between you and a life worth remembering. Dear friend, I don't hope for you to live a perfect life. I hope you live a life with fewer apologies to yourself. And the only way to achieve that is choose rightly, consistently, without waiting for inspiration. Because when you choose action over delay, perseverance over impulse, gratitude over complaints, you're not just avoiding regret, you're creating memories, the kind that years later, as you sit in an old chair, you'll look back and say, I lived, and I lived the way I want to be remembered. So start today. Write one line. Make one call. Turn off one distraction. Say one honest word, and take one small step toward what you keep saying you want to do, because if you don't move today, you may not have the chance to move again. Not because you lack time, but because you've let time get used to you not using it. Regret isn't the outcome of failures. It's the result of things you knew you should do but didn't. Don't let a day come when you must live with the question, if only I had acted then. Do it today. While you still have the chance to choose, there's something modern life doesn't tell you or doesn't say long enough for you to truly grasp. Every lasting reward is guarded by a door called waiting. And the only one holding the key to that door is discipline. Discipline isn't good at making you feel instant joy. It doesn't come with fireworks, applause, or the rush of dopamine from scrolling your phone, eating sweets, or skipping hot tests. No, it arrives slowly, very slowly, but it arrives truly, and it stays. Have you noticed? Things that bring instant pleasure often lead to later regret. Things that feel uncomfortable at first are usually what create a life worth remembering. A workout isn't as fun as lounging. An hour of reading isn't as thrilling as watching short videos. But after 90 days, your body, your mind, your eyes won't lie. They reflect exactly what you've chosen. Fleeting rewards or true ones. I once knew a friend talented, intelligent, sought after by many, but he never stayed long enough to reap the fruits. He changed jobs every 6 months. Whenever things got tough, he'd say, this isn't the place for me. But it wasn't that every place was wrong. He just never stayed anywhere long enough to experience the rewards of persistence. You see, the sweetest fruit isn't on the low branches. It's where you must climb, wait, tend, and choose not to pick the unripe fruit along the way. There's a paradox I want you to remember. The thing you want most often lies beyond the thing you most want to avoid. Want a healthy body? It's behind 30 days of sweat. Want a deep relationship? It's behind uncomfortable conversations. Want financial stability? It's behind refusing impulsive spending. And you can't take shortcuts. You can't. No path bypassing discipline leads to true rewards. You might arrive sooner, but what you get will be emptier. One of the greatest lessons I learned from farming is you can't force the season. You can't plant today and demand a harvest tomorrow, but if you diligently sow at the right time, in the right way, the season will come, and it comes not with one fruit, but with a golden harvest. Modern people, though they give up halfway because they see nothing after 3 days, 7 days, 2 weeks, they don't understand. The roots are growing. Roots have no fanfare. Roots have no applause. But if you walk away while the roots are forming, you've lost the entire harvest. I once saw an old woman smiling happily as she watched her grandchildren play. I asked, "What's the secret to a life like yours?" She said, "The secret is to bear a little loss at the right time." She told me of her youth not buying pretty dresses to save for education, not going out to stay home and read, not reacting in anger to preserve relationships. And now she reaps not money, but peace of mind, the kind of reward no one sees on social media. But you know, when you rest your head at night, content. You can be praised now or respected later, but rarely both at once. And I hope you choose the deeper path. Discipline isn't the enemy of joy. It's the gatekeeper keeping cheap distractions from ruining the greater joy you deserve. A disciplined person isn't austere, they just know how to wait. And while waiting, they prepare, they learn, they act, they keep their heart steady. And then, one day, the reward comes, not as a surprise gift, but as something inevitable because they lived worthy of it. Imagine those times you were patient, not retaliating when misunderstood, not giving up when results weren't yet visible, not boasting at the first hint of success. Remember, in those moments, you felt yourself grow. You felt stronger, and even if the outcome wasn't clear, you knew you were moving toward the right place. That's the first reward of discipline. You don't need anyone to confirm you're on the right path. You feel it in every breath. So today, what will you choose? The instant gratification, or building something no one sees but you know will bloom? Don't fear slowing down. Don't fear seeing nothing yet. The greatest fear is staying still while thinking you're progressing. And only discipline will show you the difference. Life's rewards aren't given to the fastest. They go to those who stay steady when no one watches, when no one praises, when nothing is certain. And if you hold to that, you'll see your reward isn't just the outcome. It's the new person you forged. One of the bitterest truths about regret is you can't share it with anyone. It's not like sadness you can call a friend, cry a little, and feel lighter. It's not like a financial burden where you can borrow or be helped. Regret is a debt with only one signature, yours, and you're the only one who lives with it, whether you try to ignore it or pretend you've moved past it. Because the truth is, you don't move past what you haven't walked through. I once met a man in his 60s, still healthy, still witty, but during a small talk, he shared, "I had a chance to study abroad, but I stayed because I was afraid. I didn't know the language, had no money, no support. And I told myself, there'll be another chance." He paused. His eyes reddened, not from emotion, but from exhaustion. Exhaustion from carrying an unfinished story for 40 years. And I understood he didn't regret the foreign land. He regretted himself, the version of himself he never dared let exist. Are you carrying an unfinished story? A time you said you'd do something and didn't? A moment you stood at the threshold of change and turned back? A time you chose safety and let courage sleep? If so, you're not alone. But don't let that comfort you, because the truth is, many people live but never fully live. They work jobs they don't love, stay with people they don't understand, do things they don't believe in, all because of one thing: fear. And when you fear long enough, you start forgetting you ever had a choice. Discipline sounds cold, but it's the final gift to keep you from living in debt. Debt to your dreams, debt to yourself. Because every time you do what needs doing, however small, you're paying off a piece of that debt. Waking up on time, one payment. Eating a proper meal instead of fast food, one payment. An honest hug, a timely thank you, one payment. And each small payment lightens your heart. Not instantly, but after a month, a year, a lifetime, you'll see. Living without owing yourself is a happiness hard to name. I once met a woman who lost her youth to a bad marriage. When her children grew up, she started learning again, playing music, painting, gardening. Someone asked, "Why bother learning now?" She smiled and said, "So I know I'm no longer neglecting myself." Short, profound. That's discipline at its highest. Not letting yourself live another day, uncared for, unreminded, unlived. Regret doesn't crash enduring creases. It slips in on ordinary days. When a song reminds you of the dream to be a singer, when you see someone run a marathon and recall how strong you once were, when your child asks, "Do you have any dreams, Dad?" and you don't know how to answer, those are regrets invoices arriving unexpectedly and always paid with heartache. But I'm not here to make you feel it's too late. I'm here to say you still have time. As long as you're reading this, as long as your heart still aches, you can fix it. But you must choose discipline, not as a constraint, but as kindness to yourself. Because if you don't care for your life, no one will do it for you. They may love you, but no one can pay your regrets debt. And in the end only you know if you've lived rightly. If today feels heavy, don't ignore that feeling. Let it guide you back to the right path. Write down what you promised. Do what you abandoned. Learn what you dream. And this time, don't give up. Keep discipline like a rope pulling you from the debt of the soul. You don't need to do grand things. Just do them steadily. You can't pay it all in one day, but you can start in 1 minute. Pay the first debt now. Forgive yourself. Then choose one thing you'll do today, not tomorrow. No one needs to know. Just you and yourself. And when you do it, you're rewriting history. Not the world's history, but yours. And that is the only history you can master. We often think that if we don't do anything terrible in a day, that day is harmless. But that's a grave misunderstanding. A day without discipline is a day you grow weaker, not in muscle or skill, but in integrity with yourself. Weaker in commitment. Weaker in the ability to say, "I can do it." And that weakness, it builds up. It's not obvious. But one day, you no longer recognize yourself, not because you did wrong, but because you stopped doing right long enough. I once knew a young man working part-time at a small shop in my hometown. He told me, "I'll get serious when a real opportunity comes. This is just temporary." I didn't judge him, but I felt sad because he didn't understand there's no such thing as temporary. Every action you take today shapes the person you'll be tomorrow. You can't live carelessly today and expect to become admirable when the role changes. Character isn't switched on with a job. It's forged in small acts. Like how you tidy your workspace, how you show up on time, how you speak kindly even when no one demands it. Discipline is your mental muscle. If you don't train it daily, it weakens, and when you truly need it, you won't have the strength to act. Many think they'll be brave in a crisis, but courage isn't a gift that falls from the sky in emergencies. It's built by waking up on time, keeping promises, finishing tasks, facing what's hard. And if you don't do that daily, don't expect to be strong when it counts. Have you ever seen someone cry looking back on a year? Not over big events, but over hundreds of small things they didn't do. They meant to learn a skill, meant to call their mother, meant to write a plan, but they kept waiting for the right moment, waiting to be free, waiting to feel ready. And they didn't realize doing nothing today is a step back from the better version of themselves. No day is harmless. Every day you don't move forward. You slide back, gently, but steadily. Once, I was invited to speak to a group of recent graduates. I asked, "Who here has a clear goal for the next 10 years? Nearly all raised their hands. Then I asked, Who here did something specific today to get closer to that goal? Only 4 hands remain. And I told them, dreams without a plan become dreams someone else is living for you. Discipline is the line between dreaming and living, and it starts on unremarkable days when you still do what needs doing. A disciplined day doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs you to honor what you said you'd do. You said you'd read 10 pages, read, even if sleepy. You said you'd eat healthily, do it. Even if tempted. You said you'd apologize, call, even if hesitant. Every time you keep your word, you add a layer of steel to your self-respect. And someone with self-respect walks without needing others to validate them. They know who they are. I once saw a father every day waiting for his child after school, on time, without fail. One rainy day, I asked, why not let someone else pick them up? He said, because I promised, and I want my child to remember their father keeps his words. He didn't speak of discipline, but he lived it with wet shoes, an old umbrella, and the trusting eyes of a child. And I thought, discipline doesn't need to be grand. It just needs to endure. Endure so others see. So you see and believe in the person you're becoming. Dear friend, if today feels ordinary, that's when you need discipline most, because discipline wasn't made for days full of emotion. It was made to keep you from slipping on empty days. Every action leaves a mark no one sees. But you know, and your heart knows, if you want the strength to carry big dreams, you must practice lifting small bricks day after day. Choose today as the day you let no more moments slip away. Write down what you need to do. Do one thing. If that's all you can, but do it, do it. Because you don't want another day of lost strength. Do it. Because you know losing strength isn't loud. It comes quietly, but leaves emptiness. Someone once asked me, Jim, can you define self-respect in one sentence? I said, self-respect is the feeling you have about yourself after you do what's right, even when no one sees. Not after praise, not after achievements, but after you do the hard thing because you promised. And discipline, in its subtlest form, is the highest expression of self-respect. It doesn't shout. It doesn't need manifestos. It quietly repeats, I am the person I can trust. Do you know why many talented people still feel inadequate? Because they've broken promises to themselves more times than they dare admit. Every time you say you'll wake early and hit snooze. Every time you say you'll stop complaining but still blame others. Every time you say you'll start but let fear win. Those moments, you're telling your mind, I'm not trustworthy. And when you say that too often, you don't need others to belittle you. You've already done it for them. I once mentored a student, bright, full of energy. But after a few weeks, he started missing deadlines, working carelessly, making excuses. When I asked, he said, I know I need to change, but I feel I don't deserve anything good. And I told him, because you haven't kept your word to yourself. And now you're living in a world where you're the one who breaks promises. He looked at me, silent, because he knew I was right. That's when he started again, not with grand resolve, but with something small. Waking up on time for 7 days. And something miraculous happened. He began to feel worthy again. Dear friend, you can lose many things in life: jobs, money, relationships, status. But if you lose trust in yourself, you have nothing left to start over with. Every beginning, every recovery must be rebuilt from the root, self-respect. And self-respect isn't created on the day you succeed. It's accumulated in every action you take when no one forces you, when you fold your clothes neatly, when you speak the truth, when you keep a promise to yourself, even if no one knows. Discipline is how you remind yourself you deserve to live in a world of order where you don't need others' permission to believe in your worth, where your inner voice is louder than the outer noise, where every decision comes not from pressure, but from dignity. Yes, discipline is an act of dignity, because only those with self-respect have the persistence to do what's right. When every reason pulls them elsewhere, you might think, skipping one workout doesn't matter, but it's not about muscles. It's about telling your mind, commitment doesn't matter. And if you say that too often, you'll stop making commitments altogether because you fear failing again. But the truth is, you don't fear failure. You fear the moment you look at yourself and can't respect the person in the mirror. A truly strong person isn't the one who wins many battles. It's the one who lives consistently enough to never hide from their own gaze. Are you living that way? Can you look in the mirror and say, I'm doing well with what I promised myself? Not perfect, not flawless, but keeping your word steadily to yourself. If not, you know where to start. One small action, one promise kept one day without breaking your word. Discipline, when practiced rightly, means you no longer need others' approval, not because you're arrogant, but because you have a stronger validation, self-respect. And with that, you're not easily manipulated, not easily compared, not easily pulled from the path you've chosen, because you know you're the one who keeps their word. And in a world full of half-lived lives, that's the greatest strength you can carry. When I was young, I thought freedom meant doing whatever I wanted, whenever I liked, no one controlling me, no schedule, no commitments. Sounds appealing, doesn't it? But you know what? That's the definition that leads many to failure, because doing whatever you feel without principle isn't freedom, it's chaos. And chaos doesn't liberate you, it drowns you. Only with discipline are you truly free. Free from debt because you manage your finances. Free from illness because you care for your body regularly. Free from gossip because you live by your principles. Free from fleeting temptations because you've built inner strength. Free from regret because you do what needs doing each day. You see, freedom doesn't come from doing anything you want. It comes from choosing the right things and sticking to them long enough to taste the rewards. A friend once told me, Jim, I work freelance, so why am I always tired? Always lacking, always confused? I asked, what's your schedule like? He laughed, I'm free. I don't need one. I said, you're not free. You're controlled by your reactions. And that's true for so many. They think they're free because they have no boss, no one forcing them. But that makes them slaves to their emotions. Sad, they quit, lazy, they rest, feel like it. They work, don't feel like it. They stop. And the cost of life without structure, without achievement, without peace. I once said, discipline creates structure, and structure creates space. And in that space, you live, not just survive. Picture a river without banks. The water spills. Los directions causes floods. But with banks, the river knows where to flow. A disciplined person is the same. They don't drift. They flow toward their chosen destination. And that gives them more time, more help, more control. They're not pushed by other schedules. They're proactive. And proactivity is the highest form of freedom. You might feel confined when you first live with discipline, like wearing new shoes, unfamiliar, a bit painful. But if you keep at it, you'll see your steps become surer, like playing an instrument at first. Practicing each note is tiring, but then you play music without looking at the keys. Like learning to drive, everything's tense at first, but later you glide without fear of crashing. That's freedom, but a freedom built on persistence, not something that comes naturally. I once saw an old man waking early each morning, jogging, eating well, reading, keeping a journal. People ask, why be so strict with yourself? You don't need to prove anything anymore. He smiled. I don't do it to prove anything. I do it to be free from illness, from laziness, from anything that makes me less than myself. I was moved because I understood. He was living a free life, not because he did less, but because he did what was right. You can be like that too. You don't need everything to be free. You just need to control yourself. Someone who masters their morning won't be swept away by the day. Someone who masters their emotions when insulted won't be led by others. Someone who masters their finances won't be ruled by money. And all of that comes from discipline, not from circumstances, not from luck, not from environment, but from within. True freedom isn't the permission to indulge. True freedom is being strong enough to not need indulgence and still feel at peace. And the disciplined person has touched that freedom. You can listen to hundreds of lectures, read thousands of pages, write grand plans. But if you don't act consistently, you're still the same person. And that old you, no matter how many new ideas you have, will fall back to old habits, old ruts, old reactions. Discipline doesn't make you smarter overnight. It doesn't make you successful in a week, but it does something greater. It rebuilds you bit by bit from within. I once told a group of young students, if you want a great year, focus on each day. If you want a great life, focus on each action, because habits are the bricks that build your identity. And identity is the foundation of every lasting achievement. You can't live a meaningful life if your days are driven by fleeting inspiration. You need something deeper, sturdier, more foundational. And that's discipline. Discipline isn't about becoming someone else. It's about returning to the person you were meant to be, undistracted, unscattered, unswayed by short-lived desires. Discipline teaches you to live by design, not by reflex. It reminds you, you didn't come to this world to merely exist. You came to build, and every worthwhile creation demands consistency. You know, what haunts me isn't the failures I faced in life. It's the times I knew what was right but didn't do it. Because I was tired, because I was bored, because I thought I could do it later. And those moments, they're silent cracks, not big, but enough to make a day lose meaning, a week lose direction, a month pass in a daze. Until you look back and say, where did I go all this time? That's why I keep a schedule. That's why I write my commitments each morning. That's why I do what's right, even when no one sees. Because I know no one can live my life for me. No one can take responsibility for me. And if I want to be proud of the life I've lived, I can't let days pass without a trace. Discipline, even small, is the mark you carve into your life. It says you were here, you tried, you truly lived. One day of exercise, nothing special, but 100 days you're stronger, more confident, your stride bolder. One day of reading, no one notices, but 365 days you speak better, listen better, ask deeper questions. One day of not losing your temper, no one claps, but 5 years later, someone beside you says, being with you feels peaceful. It all starts with small seeds planted with discipline, and you don't need to plant them all today. Just don't stop planting, a little each day, a step forward each week, an upgrade each month. And one day you won't recognize yourself, not because you're pretending, but because you've grown, because you've lived. Instead of just repeating, I want you to pause for a moment, breathe slowly, and ask, am I living worthy of the person I know I can become? If the answer is no, start again. Quietly, without fanfare, just start. Act silently, steadily, persistently. If the answer is yes, hold on to it. protected from distractions, from temptations, from the doubting voice in your head. Because discipline isn't just what you do. Discipline is what you become. A person who can stand tall through storms. A person others can lean on. A person who, when night falls, in a room no one witnesses, can still smile and say, I kept my word to myself.